Hi, welcome, good afternoon. I'm Yael Cassandra, Communications Director for the City of Bloomington, and thanks for joining us for another Facebook Live discussion here from City Hall. I'm joined today by Mayor John Hamilton and Deputy Mayor Mick Reniason, also Administrative Coordinator Morgan Allen, and new to our Facebook series today, it's Chris Smith, who joins us as the Special Projects Manager from Public Works. And why are we here today? It's the second of our discussions of our budget goal updates, our second budget goal update. We had one back in September when we were reviewing the first half of 2018, and now that 2018 is in the books, we're coming to you again to share some of the accomplishments of the past year. Here's a little background on what we're doing. Since 2016, the City of Bloomington has been developing and managing with detailed budget goals to create greater transparency and accountability with regard to city projects and programs, the investments that support them, and the results achieved. Beginning in 2017, the city started using a new system, a collaborative project management application, to track and share goals and activities and results, and to provide real-time updates. The information is used in budget development and review with the City Council, and also shared on the city website semi-annually. So now that the 2018 budget goals can be measured against outcomes, we want to share those results with you and talk a little bit about what we've learned. So we're here today to discuss those results. And just a reminder that we invite you to participate in our conversation today. Just go to the comments section and enter your question at any point during our discussion today. And we'd love to try to answer your questions. So a reminder also that you can see the entire update on our website at bloomington.in.gov/city/budget/updates. And so let's get a little bit back into the origins of this document, which is a 2018 document, but goes all the way back to 2017, and we're talking about it now, almost 2 years later, has a 2-year timeline. Mayor, what's the origin of this document that we're discussing today?
Well, thanks to everybody for listening to. I guess I would actually go back to the first day when I was in office, and I used a phrase to talk about government, and I stole it, I guess. I stole it from Dr. Seuss, I think, and amended it a little. But the notion that in government we need to say what we will do, and then do what we say. And to say what we'll do means to be very transparent and clear about, as a government, what are we trying to do? And the budget process is one of the most important central places where you say what we'll do, because you're saying it. We're asking for investments of many different kinds to say what we will do with those investments. So that's the budget, and we wanted to be sure that we got better and kept getting better at saying what we'll do. And then the do what we'll say part comes in on, well, how did it go? Did we do what we said? And that's what this report helps us do every year, and it's on the website as well, to go back and say, okay, well, we actually, I think there's over 500 goals that are articulated for the government, and then we go back and say, well, how did we do on those? And that's what this document does, and we are not going to go through 500 goals, either here or even at the budget process. You can't do that, but it's just so, there's a lot going on, but it's trying to make sure the public can see if there are areas you care about, and of course each of our division cabinet leaders cares a lot about their goals, and they manage toward them, and I think it's really important to score ourselves and see how we did. So that's where this comes from.
Right. So we have a couple of folks here today who have quite a lot of longevity with the City of Bloomington. Our Deputy Mayor Reniason has been here for a few decades, I understand, as have you, Chris. Mm-hmm. So maybe you can talk about how this compares to what was done in the past as far as tracking goals or establishing budgets.
Sure. So in my 38 years with the city, I would say that the city's always articulated its goals as part of the budget development process. And those can be fairly broad and have been fairly broad over those decades that I've observed our budget process develop. And so, for example, in parks, that I was a part of that department for 35 years, many, many decades ago, we might have said, we're going to provide swimming lessons, period, end of sentence. That didn't really articulate, like we are trying to do today, how many swimming lessons, how many sessions, how many people are we serving, what's the cost of providing those swimming lessons, what's the subsidy that the taxpayer is paying to provide swimming lessons. Just as one example of, in that department, probably 500 different service level delivery points that we touch the community with. So I think that's what I've noticed over my career here, is going from a more generalized way of describing and articulating what the city's goals were in all the departments, to a more specific way that Mayor Hamilton has articulated earlier about, we're going to say what we're going to do, and we're going to do that. We're going to show the community, report back out, have we achieved those goals? Now, goals are aspirational, so you'll see later when we show this, we're not going to get 100%,
right.
And that should be okay. And I applaud the mayor for allowing that, because it's easy to set a goal you can attain readily, and then say, well, look, we got them all right. But you want to have aspirational goals you want to reach. And sometimes you aren't going to reach them for reasons out of your control. And so we'll articulate those as we kind of walk through some of the examples we have later. But that's what I've noticed in my career, and thankfully Mayor Hamilton took the way that parks moved towards about 25 years ago, when we became more specific in the way that we looked at our goals, taking the swimming pool example and saying, now we're going to have X number of sessions, and our goal is to have so many children that are that go through and achieve certification as able to swim, and other things as part of that. And then we would measure back. What you're looking for, or what I was looking for at the time, was where trends would start to change. Are we spending too many resources, assuming that there's going to be 500 kids swimming in swimming lessons this year, when really there were only 250? And if so, we should be shifting our resources to something else. What is the emerging trend in that particular area, or any of the areas that that particular department serves? So now all of our departments are looking at it that way, and have been starting to change the way they structure their goals in the last 3 years, and getting more metric driven and specific, which other guests will explain that in a moment.
I see, yeah, so getting more granular about those goals, and we'll talk about SMART goals in just a second. And the real narrative, I mean, that's something that, if there is something to enjoy in a document that many people might consider dry, it is those stories that emerge, and we'll share some of those, rather than this being something that's really just overwhelming readers with numbers. It actually does tell stories.
Well, let me add another layer to that. So we call our budgeting process activity-based budgeting, or program-based budgeting. It's basically saying, here's the service, an activity or program, whatever you want to call it, and here are our goals for that activity or service. In some organizations, not here in this city, but other places I've seen, you would take last year's budget and add a % to it and say, that's my new budget. That's not really delving deep into and understanding, did we accomplish anything with that? It's just simply adding a % to that.
For inflation.
For inflation.
So just assuming that the needs are going to stay the same, and just slapping a little bit more on top to cover inflation.
Right, not very thoughtful, not very thorough, not very...
And so there are cities that do that, or companies?
There are. In our experience here, we've not ever done that. So I want to make that clear to our audience.
Right.
We've never approached it that way, but I know places that do. So there's another term, and I'll just mention this, the notion of zero-based budgeting. Essentially, we've asked our departments each year in this budgeting process, think as if you were starting at zero, and how would you build the budget for that particular year. Now, we know we have sunk costs. That is, we're not going to terminate the 700 staff we have and start over. We have those costs, and we know we have basic service delivery levels we have to do every year. We're going to plow streets. Chris will talk about all the services in public works. We're going to provide fire protection and police protection in parks and internal service departments, controller's office, and all those things. We're going to do that. So it's not exactly looking at it from zero, but your more discretionary things should be driven by your goals. So if you see a trend coming or something emerging that you need to address, we don't have an infinite amount of money here. We have to shift our priorities to accommodate what's that new emerging trend. Mayor Hamilton can talk about what we've been spending those discretionary dollars, if you will, on in recent years. It's the subject of a lot of our attention here, affordable housing and our infrastructure replacement and repair program. So, you know, we have to make those choices, and that's why doing a zero-based model really helps you look at what are we going to give to spend money where we need it for the delivery of services to our community.
Yeah, important point. I mean, in the 38 years that you've been with the city, a lot has changed.
It has.
Maybe, Chris, from your perspective, as someone who's been here for 28 years, how have you seen things change in public works?
Well, I mean, I think Mick did an excellent job defining how we approached our budget and our goals in our budget, and we tracked services like number of lane miles, how many potholes have we done, how many live release rates for animals, and how much tonnage, just to name a few of those services. And so they were tracked in general terms, and we had general goals. Using the management tool that called Trello, it is effective. It is a very effective management tool, and it keeps your department accountable. You lay out these goals that you want to reach to maintain, and you do reach, and you know you may not reach 100%. And in Public Works Administration, we have bi-monthly meetings. We update the Trello or our goals every quarter. We meet with division heads. I meet with division heads on their specific goals. We look at the data. Are we reaching this goal? Is it attainable? If it's not attainable, what can we do to be more accountable and reach this goal that we have established for ourselves? And I just, I think the biggest thing, it's a very effective tool to use that you could look at. Some people look at it every day. Some people look at it once a month. But it keeps you accountable and on track for the goals that you have set for your department. And I think that's the biggest difference.
That's fantastic. Morgan, you've done a lot in terms of being the liaison between the Office of the Mayor and the various departments in assembling these goals, these respective goals of each department. You have been trained in goal defining, I should say it, and so there's an acronym that you like to use all the time, and that you've tried to train all the department heads in. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, so that is SMART goals. It's mainly used in like the business field, but we have now applied it to our city goal development. And
you don't just mean intelligent goals, do you?
No.
Okay. They are intelligent.
Yes.
Okay.
So SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So in order to have an effective goal that we can conduct outcome-based evaluation, we need to have those 5 criteria.
What are they again? I gotta hear those.
Yeah. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound.
And who's the judge? Those all sound like subjective terms.
We all work on reviewing those goals and make sure our departments are drafting those appropriately.
Was there kind of any pushback against this paradigm shift from a more generalized budget to SMART specific goals?
Absolutely. So in the previous budget cycles, you would see a lot of tasks listed instead of goals.
What's a task?
So a task, the way we describe it is that they are tactical and they'll likely happen anyway, so they don't need to be included in your goals. One example is filing. There were many departments that would have a goal of filing papers. Not really a goal.
Okay, right.
Yeah, so we define goals as being strategic and aspirational. So it's how can we improve our services and how can we better our departments.
Yeah, it makes me think too, Morgan, you get into this, and there are always so many different levels you can do. Just to follow on the swimming lesson example, for example, you know, one level you can just be super vague and kind of say, we're going to give swimming lessons at our pool. Or you might even be more vague and say, we're going to have a pool, and it's going to cost this much, and people will enjoy it. Next level is we're going to have a pool, and it costs this much, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to offer swimming lessons, we're going to let it be rented for facility, et cetera, et cetera. Another level would be, we're going to have a pool, and it's going to have all these programs, and by the way, we want to be sure we get 500 kids attending swimming lessons, and we want to be sure we get 24 community events that use the pool, et cetera, et cetera. Another level you could go would be, you know, why are we giving swimming lessons? Maybe what we really want to do is we say we want every 6-year-old in the city, or 50% of the 6-year-olds in the city, to be able to swim. Is that what it's about? Or you can set goals at more and more levels. And one of the good things about this process, I think, is both for us and department heads and for city council and for the public, it lets us think about, well, why are we investing in a pool? And what is success? Like, what's a good year? If we're doing swimming lessons for the heck of it, because kids like to swim and all, so be it. But if it's actually, we have a goal for this community, we want people to learn to swim, I don't know what the right goal is, but that kind of helps us raise this question up. And I know we'll talk some about streets too, like when we pave a certain amount of street miles. Well, it's not just because we like to pave street miles. Why do we do that? What is the ultimate goal? Is to have good streets, and then I know we'll talk about other ways to measure that. So it really makes us think about, what do we care about? What are the outcomes that we want?
So it seems really mission-driven, very much.
And transparent, so that we then can know at the end of the year, well, if our goal was 500 lessons, and we gave 600, that's great. If we gave 380, why was that? Think about it, should the goal change, whatever.
Wow, this is fantastic.
So probably the new element in the 2020 version of the budget will be the parks layer that the mayor talked about, and that's measuring it against how many residents or visitors use a service that the city provides. To the best of the ability of our departments to measure that, we'd like to know, how many people are we serving with this program or activity? It's kind of easy to do in parks because most of that is real measurable, right? We can do the swimming lesson example, or how many teams played in a softball league, or how many kids played in youth baseball, or how many farmers market attendees were there, and vendors, and we have examples of that. It's a little bit more difficult to articulate in other departments, and that's where the transition from where we were in 2016 to where we'll be in 2020 is really emerging. And this is the next layer, is how many people are we serving with these respective services that the 17 departments provide, and then what's the cost per service for each one of those individual interactions we have. And it doesn't mean it's good or bad if it's a high number, it just means we now know, here's what it costs to do that. If it's, Chris may tell us how much it costs to fill a pothole, I think we know that number. Then we can, and we just filled thousands of them, then you know how your city dollars are being used, and if it's an appropriate expenditure of those funds or not. When we go to the city council, they can see that, and the public, as the mayor said, sees it's very transparent. So that's the next layer of budgeting that we'll develop in the 2020 process.
Yeah, and it's great that we're talking about it now. It's the end of March, but departments are already, we've been reminded, in the process of starting to draft their budget goals for the 2020 budget. So it's wonderful that we have this document now that we're looking at today to inform the way we draft those things.
Yeah, and I don't think I really answered your 2-year frame, which it gets us right back to that. So the 2018 year, which we're reporting on, really began at least in mid-2017 to develop the budget, to present it to city council, for them to pass it with all of these goals in it. And of course, during 2018, as Chris is describing, we use it to manage, are we meeting our goals, et cetera, et cetera. 2018 ends, we look back on the whole year, we're now partway into 2019, looking back at 2018, see how did we do, and we'll go to look at that. That helps inform us into the preparation for the 2020 budget, even though we're in the middle of 2019. So this is a really long-term, and it is a kind of a 2-year cycle almost, from preparing the budget, operating the budget, reviewing the budget. And we do that every year. Yeah, but what's great is that you know, there is that accountability. And if you think about, you know, there's the saying about what we measure, we can improve. I love that saying. So think about, you know, so yes, you'll see as soon as we, so
you know, with bated breath, we are awaiting this report. But, you know, there are things, goals that weren't met indeed, and certainly that's always going to be the case. But if you don't measure something, how can you even know whether you were successful in accomplishing it or not? So, and can I just say, there is an old saying, which I never liked, but it was real, that said in government, never put a date and a number in the same sentence. Because, oh my goodness, government will be held accountable. If you say
certain number and a certain date, it's scary,
Right.
which it is
It
somewhat.
holds your
because
feet to the fire.
it
for
does,
sure.
and governments, you know, politicians, I'm elected, governments don't like necessarily
Yeah.
to put up this measuring stick that then we can be hoisted by, I guess, you know. But I think it's really important
Yeah.
for trust and accountability, and so that's what we're doing today, and it's a little scary, but that's okay, and that's what we need to do.
Well, the first illustration we're going to have is this pie chart that demonstrates exactly the breakdown of all of those 500 goals from 2018, and now from this vantage point we can see how many were green accomplished, yellow substantially accomplished, and red not met. How do we define those categories? I mean,
Yeah.
it seems self-evident, but
So it really has to be a measurable goal in order for us to use these status labels. So accomplished is that you accomplished 100% of your goal. Woohoo! You did a really great job. This is what we strive for, obviously. Substantially accomplished is that it's 50% or more of your goal. So if you had a goal to give 400 swimming lessons, if you gave at least 200, that's substantially accomplished. And then not met is 50% or less, well 49% or less. And obviously we don't want a lot of those, but I've been really thankful that Mayor Hamilton encourages us to set high goals for ourselves. And if we don't meet it, that's okay, but how can we reevaluate it next year? And that's why we track these.
Yeah, and then we'll go through examples, I know, but if that red wedge were non-existent or tiny, it would suggest maybe we didn't set
Shoot
enough
high
goals, shoot high enough.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we had a phenomenal year and got everything, but also things change in the year. Priorities that are set 6 months ahead can be overcome by certain other demands in the city, that changes in activities or weather or program or partners who can't do what we hope they might do. So that's okay. I feel, this is in the aggregate of 500 plus, it's kind of interesting to see that. And overall ratios are kind of feel okay that we have a wedge that said we didn't certain, but more importantly, it's kind of digging into each one. What happened? And it lets us go through 500 of them and see where we are.
it brings up the question, when you're working with departments to establish these goals and approving these goals, is there ever a give and take about that? About
Oh, yeah.
people who, or department heads, I should say, who are overly ambitious and aspirational, and some whose ambition you need to tamp down a little bit to be more realistic?
Always. I mean, you could speak on that too. You were a department head, and now you deal with them all.
Now I work with all other 16 of them, and yeah, there's certainly, there's human nature involved in any goal setting experience, and some of them are more
January
aspirational.
1st, right? January.
Yeah.
Some are more aspirational, and some are a little bit more conservative about, they just don't want to set themselves up or their staff, and it's understandable, for what might be viewed as, oh my gosh, if we showed you each one of these departments and somebody's didn't look like this representative sample, they might feel like they failed. And that's not what these are about. It's not about pointing out failure, it's about how do we get better.
How could you speak to that, Chris, from your perspective? Like, how do you get at the Goldilocks solution of not too much, not too low, just right?
Well, I mean, there's no formula, but what we try to do in Public Works is we look at what measurables we did have in the past and the programs that we have current, and we make our estimated guess. We always want to increase it a little bit. So we looked at past years, and for example, euthanasia rate at the animal care and control.
Oh, it's important to note that
Yes.
Public Works deals with the animal shelter.
Yes.
That's one of the
That's
various
one of our
divisions, along with
divisions.
sanitation,
Mhm.
streets. Just so, because not everyone knows.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I'm sorry.
That's
And
okay.
yes, so we have 6 divisions in Public Works, and Public Works which is animals, animal care and control, fleet maintenance, sanitation, parking facilities. We have Public Works admin, and street.
Ooh, that's a
My
lot.
goodness,
Yeah.
you don't want to forget street. They have so many services. So.
But like with euthanasia, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I
that's
interrupted
okay. With euthanasia, we looked at, we always try to get better every year, as the deputy mayor and Mayor Hamilton have already stated. So we look at those goals. How can we improve? What can we do to make that percentage go down and down and down? So we try to set like a moderate goal at first when we talk about it while we were developing our goals, and then we're like, you know, let's try to go 3 or 4 or 5 percentage points above and see what we can do to reach that goal. And if we don't reach that goal, then we have grown on our way of doing things in public works. Then the next year we should be able to reach the goal that maybe we got very close but we didn't. And I think euthanasia rates is a sensitive subject. Last year's rates were 6%, and we want to lower that cost.
The best ever.
Yeah, the best ever, and we want to get better. You know, our goal is 0.
Right.
Yeah.
And one thing I just note about that too, which it helps, a couple things. One, it helps the city council, on behalf of all of us, also look at what are those goals, and they're part of the process. Are we ambitious enough, or should we try to do more? But it also means just taking euthanasia, for example. Maybe animal control is going to say, look, we made 6%, but to get to 2% or 3%, we think we're going to have to do this new training, or this new piece of equipment, or this new program that we need to do, and that's going to cost us $40,000, whatever, some number. Well, then that's saying, all right, well, we'll put $40,000 in, but you're telling us if we do that, you can get euthanasia rates down from 6 to 3 or whatever. And it makes you really think about, is the investment there worth it for that goal that we want to get? Or that's just kind of, I'm making that example up, but it's how this helps us prioritize, right? Because maybe that 40,000 would do something else over in streets. We say, well, is it more important to get euthanasia down from 6 to 3, or is it more important to get a better number of sidewalk ramps? I mean, budgets are complicated, but it helps us do that kind of way.
Yeah, and it does. It helps us make the big picture goal. And just,
I can imagine also that it could go the other direction, where if there were a significant nonprofit or another agency, I'm thinking of Pets Alive and some of the other groups in town who are working toward the same goals, who are real partners, that possibly that could take the stress off the city budget in certain ways.
Yes, and we do have a collaborative effort and goals with the Monroe County Humane Association and Pets Alive and the local veterinarians for spay and neuter when we're getting an animal ready for their new forever home. And they give us a reduced rate, and which helps everyone. The city's budget and community level engagement is increased, and awareness.
Yeah. So,
no, I just
add something.
No, I'm done.
Oh, okay. Well, shall we go to the sort of behind the scenes organizational tool that we're using, the Trello Cards that help inform the report that we have here. So maybe someone could navigate here and just share with our audience what exactly this is and how this works.
So it's busy.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
At the top, along the top, of course, we can see the various departments. So BFD, CFRD,
each column's
CBU,
a different department.
And then each of these are called cards. So.
This is just an internal project management system that we use. In our goal updates that we publish, you don't see this.
Right.
This is so overwhelming. It's a lot of information. So
it's kind of the admin side.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is our behind the scenes tool.
Right.
So I take this and I work with all the departments, make sure we're tracking our goals, and then I put together this updates document that we've now published for the public to look it over and hold us accountable. If they want to see what we accomplished and what we didn't. So this is more the internal tool, and the updates document is something for public consumption.
The reason I wanted for us to share this though with our audience is that this is a dynamic board.
Oh, absolutely.
So you were mentioning, Chris, that at your bi-monthly meetings, you talk about these particular cards all the time and talk about accomplishment rates and.
Yes, we do. We do a round table when it gets close to our quarterly updates, and we talk about the goals and how we can achieve those, and what are we doing, what do we need to do better, and in order to do better, do we need any additional resources or more time management resources? How can we reach that goal? And then I go back and I meet with the individual division heads and make sure that we're doing that to see if we need to change the way we do that. And so I think, I'm applauding Public Works, that's my department, but we have a very good administration team, and it starts from the top, and then we work with the division heads and kind of make the wheel go around, the whole circle, we make the whole circle. But
well, let's get into one of your.
And even that board shows, you can see the green and the yellow and the red. I mean, that kind of pops up right there.
Exactly. So the red being a not met goal and being accomplished, and then they all have that date on them.
Let's go to the next.
Yeah. So if we go to so here we are in one of the divisions of Public Works, Sanitation. This happens to be a goal that comes out of the previous report. And so this is a pretty great accomplishment here. Let's talk about that. The goal
so that goal
here
would have been set in 2017
so
for the 18 budget.
Right, and the goal was to increase the recycling participation by 10 to 12%. Well, guess what? You were under ambitious.
yes, we were.
Knocked it out of the park.
Yes, we did. And I can speak to why we believe that we received that increased percentage rate.
Which was?
24.5% increase in recycling participation rate. And I think that basically through our sanitation modernization program, that through Mayor Hamilton's initiative, we made recycling easier for residents. We went from dual stream recycling to single stream, which means you didn't have to divide your recyclables and hold them for 2 weeks before you were ready for collection.
We went to weekly.
And then we went to weekly.
Right.
And so that's...
I know that every week.
That's right.
Whether you have any or not.
And no sorting requirements, and we provided a cart with a lid to keep the recyclable materials dry, which is very important.
You know, that's interesting, because so that we almost doubled the goal, but more importantly, we had almost 25% increase in recycling tons. But they're not as wet either.
Exactly.
So in some ways, you could expect the weight to go down a little if you had the same volume of material, because now that they don't absorb the rain, the weight is lower, but the weight went up 25%.
Exactly.
And then, Chris, do you use these updates to then draft your goals for the next time?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So we see what we met, and then we want to get better.
So that was accomplished. That's good.
That was
That's
accomplished.
great.
And if I could just add too, it's nice that there is this opportunity for narrative and for speculation about why these goals were increased. Here in the updated column, you say that we added a note on utilities customer bills, just reminding them of the right way to recycle. You think that maybe played a role?
Yes.
You use Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to share the message. So
yes, and we also, if I could expand upon that just a little bit, we also, the Public Works staff went out and attended public meetings, neighborhood meetings. We had, when the citizen would call in about what cart size that they would like to choose, we had a discussion with every citizen that called about education and communication, and this is going to be easier, will take up less space in your garage. And everyone, oh yeah, I want to recycle. I'm a big recyclable, and I recycle a lot. And we got that over and over and over.
Well, it's great to have these notes on here
Yes,
because
it
it
is.
doesn't, then it's not just, oh wow, we got a big bump in recycling rates, wonder why.
Right.
You know, it's
Exactly.
nice that you keep track of these initiatives that you implemented.
Mhm.
What should we look at next?
Do we want to move to Transmap?
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
Yeah, Transmap, that's another word that might be
Can we do the
something.
BPD one real quick?
Oh, yeah.
Only because that one, while I was glancing at it again, it reminded me that 2 years ago, we did a city survey, and we're in the process, many of you out in the world are responding to those now, or already have, thank you for that. And I want to applaud Mayor Hamilton for putting that first survey out to the community to find out where people had concerns about things and where they'd like to see us improve, because that helped us set our goals for 2018. And here's one of them. We found out in the survey from 2017 that people had a sense of feeling unsafe downtown. And so we set a goal based on the Safety, Civility, and Justice Task Force that the mayor formed after finding out these concerns about downtown safety. And we accomplished lowering that sense of insecurity downtown by doing some programs. And those reflect in this update a decrease of 16% in service calls in the downtown. So that's a direct correlation. First asking people what they were concerned about, then responding to that, and then measuring, did we make a dent in it? Did we make a difference in it? And the answer is yes. We're going to find out again from the survey results, did that metric move down from 2 years ago? Did people's sense of safety downtown improve or not? If not, or if it
Keep
stayed
working.
marginally the same, we've got to keep working at it. We've got to keep enhancing that till that sense of safety is, I feel completely safe going downtown any time of the day or night, right? That would be, to Chris's point, the zero euthanasia rate.
Right.
That would be the example of a very unattainable goal, of course, but one that you'd like to aspire to. So that's an example of how we use data from our surveys, incorporate it into our budget goals, and then measure against it.
And just to add, Nick, people that did not receive a survey in the mail, they can go online and complete the survey, and our social media team can link that later, so you can submit that survey online.
Right, and we should note too that the surveys are going to be tallied separately.
Yes.
So the
Yes.
scientific method that's used to randomly distribute surveys, that result is going to be different from
Correct.
the other result. But it's still, we still want to
Yeah,
know.
it's still
we still
important.
want to give everyone.
I'm admittedly a survey geek, so I would readily acknowledge in my prior life in parks we used those a lot, and having the city do one broadly and having the community respond so well to it. I think over 600 responses were received in the first one. That's a lot in a survey sample of about 3,000 typically. But we had 1,500 people fill out the non-scientific one last time, and I wouldn't be surprised to see our community do that again this time. And the incredible thing was the results were almost the same. So no bias from the non-scientific one. Sometimes you get that. People kind of stack the survey and try to get you to do something because they want to move the needle. That didn't happen here. It really kind of matched our scientific version. So we're anxious to see how that, or at least I am anyway. Maybe not everybody, but I like to see the results from those surveys.
I think everyone is, and it's important to note also that it is feedback that will be used in a substantive
Absolutely.
way
Yeah.
in terms of drawing up budgets. So
Let's see, what's
what
the
what should we look at next?
Transmap?
Oh yeah, Transmap. Tell us what's Transmap. That's going to be a new term for folks.
Yeah.
Transmap is actually a company who provides infrastructure, services, and assistance to city-owned or county-owned governments. They're based out of Columbus, Ohio. So I'm sure many of you and our audience has seen the Google car. So it is a similar type of piece of equipment. They have a car, they have a trailer. They also use LiDAR, which is light detection and ranging system, and that is pulled behind the vehicle with the trailer. And that trailer actually takes sonar pictures of the pavement. And that way we get a clear picture of the distresses in the pavement. And they can run that down the street, and they're very good at it. And that data comes back to us, and it's all uniformed, and it's all standardized, and it's by the latest criteria, like the federal government MUTCD, which is, I have to look at that, is the U.S. Department of Transportation Manual of Uniform Traffic Control and Devices. Boy, that's a mouthful, isn't it? But it's important. It is a standard that we are held accountable to.
And this, I mean, this gets us to the level of not just saying how many potholes did we fill, how many street miles did we pave, how many sidewalks did we replace, but what is the condition of every square foot of our streets and our sidewalks? And it says, because the goal ultimately, and it scores it from 1 to 100.
Yes.
And the goal ultimately is to be able to say where our streets are and where we want them to be. This is right, absolutely a question of, well, if we're at a bunch of streets at 70, if we want to get them all at 90, we can figure out how much that's going to cost. And it's kind of a community question. How much do we want to pay to get what quality? And this really lets us get good data to evaluate and set goals for that. So I guess this goal was really just about getting the Transmap done, right?
Yes, and then they have finished the pavement assessment, sidewalk assessment. They've done the sign assessment. What they are going to finish is the sign reflectivity. And what does that mean? Well, that means...
So these are all the street signs that are out there.
Like there's stop signs, and behind them it's a material, and it's a honeycomb shape. And they have to do these inspections at night because it has to meet a certain reflectivity to shine when the car lights hits the sign, that they can see it.
Right.
Like it comes up red, oh, that's a stop, you know. And so there's a standard that we must maintain. And that is the last part of Transmap will do. You have to, and they have to do that at night.
So this says it's substantially accomplished because we didn't get one part
Just
of that
one
analysis done, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, but it'll be done in 19.
Yes,
Right,
yes, yes.
So this also emerged out of, this was accelerated by the Innovation Department.
Yes, it was.
You all in Public Works collaborated with the Innovation Department and the Mayor's Office to accelerate finding and deploying this Transmap system so that we could more quickly assess the condition of all the things you said, our roads, our sidewalks, our street signs, and all of those other assets that you all take care of. And then with that data, we can start being more strategic about how we invest money in the ones that need the most attention the most rapidly. So that happened as a result of collaboration between two departments.
Yes, it
The
did.
Innovation Fund helped accelerate the completion of the project.
Yes, and in regards to pavement, the data directly correlates to the paving schedule.
Right, that's what you use. I think this is all on Be Clear now too.
Yes, it is. It's all
so
on
you can go
Be
look and
Clear,
check out your own
yes.
score of your neighborhood if you want to. It's going to be.
So that's been an excellent point that I think a lot of people watching, if there are a lot of people watching, would want to know. How does the city decide, Mayor, which streets get paved in what order and what sequence?
With a coin?
That's not the answer. That's not the
I'm
answer.
kidding.
But as we know now, it's because it's data driven.
Exactly.
We look for the worst ones and we repair those. We are certainly sensitive to geography and places that need it and more traffic than other places and all that. But you have data that drives that decision. It's not like a whim by the mayor
or an angry neighbor.
or an angry neighbor yells louder than somebody else and gets their road paved sooner, right?
Yes, it is, and it's scored from 0 to 100, and you set that fail rate. Which means it doesn't mean that your street is horrible. It's just a median score, and we want to get, and it allows us, we want, like Mayor Hamilton said, but to move it up, we want everything to be a 70 or an 80. All right, these are the streets that fall below that based upon the current conditions of the pavement.
Yep.
It's wonderful to have an actual quantifiable tool or to measure.
Oh, it's very valuable.
You were telling me, Chris, earlier, in contrast to what we're doing now with Transmap and getting those metrics, in the past you said you would go out and kind of try to check on the streets and see how they were looking.
I did.
Yeah, in kind of a casual way.
In a casual way, we had a training manual, and we went out and I inspected street segments, I inspected sidewalk segments.
And I'm sure you're very attentive and conscientious.
Yes, and yes, much to my daughter's chagrin. When I'm driving, I'm like, look at that sidewalk. I better check on that one.
This method is just a little more scientific, though, I guess.
Yes, oh, it's very scientific, and it's very standardized, and it meets all the local and and up-to-date requirements that we need to maintain, yes.
Well,
Keep going.
yeah, why don't we? Sure.
What else we got?
How about
So,
we can talk about one that we didn't meet.
oh, good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
All right.
So,
So we can go to the office of the mayor.
all right.
We'll be a little hard on
So,
ourselves.
yeah, let's read this. The goal was to establish a citywide high-speed broadband network to enhance economic development for the community. So, Mayor, could you
Sure.
talk
So
about
this
that?
is and has been a big goal for the community. You know, I've said since I've been in office, this digital infrastructure is so important, like the streets and electricity and water and everything else. And we've worked very hard to find partners. This is one that we can't really do ourselves. We have to find the partners to do this, but it's still a goal that we put in there. And we report that we have not met that goal. We've come up to the line a couple different times with different partners
Yeah.
to do this. The election in 2016 changed things. Anyway, there's not a long narrative in there, but you know, it puts us out there saying this is a goal. We didn't meet it. It's a goal in 2019 too. It's still sitting in our goal box, if you will, and we're going to keep working on it. But we didn't get it done yet. So it lets people go through here, and I do encourage people. You may have areas of city government you're really interested in. Go in and look at these goals and dig in and see what you think about them, and also share it with your city council member if you want to, what you think about them. And this is one that's in the pink. It's not met, so we're going to keep after it.
And here's where you
Thanks
can
for bringing
find
that up,
it.
Morgan.
Yeah,
It's
great.
bloomington.in.gov/city/budget/updates, and I'm sure that that's in the comments section.
And I do want to add, there is a link for public comment in the document. So if you want to click on there, you can submit any comment. It can be anonymous if you'd like for it to be anonymous, and we will make sure that it gets to the appropriate department. And we use those comments when we are working on writing our goals.
Right, or if you don't want to wait that long, make a comment now.
Yeah.
You can ask us any question about our budget in the comments section right now, and we'd love to engage with you. Well, let's move on to another goal. Let's see, we were thinking about looking at, would you like to look at water, or would you like to look at parks and rec?
Fire training?
We need fire
Fire
training.
training? Okay.
This isn't even a Trello picture of it's a different picture. Huh?
Yes, but you can find the goal that this correlates with on page 33 of the budget goal update document. So the red line that you can see on this left graph is the goal that the fire department set for their training. You can see in most of the months they have met or exceeded this goal, and in November they just barely missed it, but they did overachieve their goal. So now they use this information to then set their 2020 goals, and they know what their capacity is, and they can just reach a little bit higher, so we have a better trained department.
Right, so the fire department has been very committed to increasing and improving training. They improved their national ratings of the readiness and quality of the fire department, and a big part of that was substantial training. I think the graph on the right are the different kinds of training, and
Yes.
these are hours of training of our approximately 100 professional firefighters. And right, every month they total up the hours, see where they are on the benchmark, and they exceeded their goal in 2018. In fact, part of that may be reflected in the fact that the fires have gone down 35% over a 3-year period, and we continue. That's a big goal, right? Having fewer fires. This is a kind of a component goal of how we try to get good results for everybody. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and again, that training did contribute to their ranking, their ISO ranking of, it's a 2, I guess, which means they're in the top 2% of fire departments.
1 being best.
1 being best.
10 being,
yeah.
you don't really have a fire department.
That's right.
And they moved from a 3 to a 2, and I think the department is striving to take it up 1 more notch, and we'll see where that goes. That's a good thing.
So the training's paid off.
On the graph on the left, just because it would be hard to read, that metric is 3,500 hours a month of training in the fire department, and you divide that by the 100 relatively
A lot.
so
Right.
35 hours
Yeah.
a month. That's a lot. That's a
Which
week's
is-
worth of work being spent on training for our fire staff, which is great.
Pretty fantastic. All right, so that's some good news. Shall we go to,
I can do parks or utilities.
You got time for both?
We can do
Do
both.
parks or whatever's,
Yeah.
that's utilities.
This is utilities. Parks.
Oh, I should take this one, huh?
Yeah, you should.
So our beloved farmers market, by the way, opens April 6th for the season. So that's coming up shortly, wherever you might be hearing this. It's April 6th. It's not April 6th today, but it's coming up soon. And so every year the Parks Department sets goals of how many farm vendors we'd like to have out at the farmers market location. And in this particular year, the goal was to contract with a minimum of 120. And actually in 2018, Parks contracted with 125, so an increase over previous years. And I can remember when this goal was 100, so it's definitely incrementally moved up. And then the second part of that was there's prepared food vendors that would like to supply their prepared food product out to the 3,000 plus average weekly attendees at the farmers market. And the goal there was to have a minimum of 10, and there were actually 19, so a lot of demand for that. So they'll, I'm sure, set their goals a little higher to have more of those in here. And then the second part of this goal, this is one of the more unusual ones, I think, because there's revenue generation capacity in the Parks Department, and not every department has that ability. This goal was to meet the Park Board, which is the appointed board by the mayor that oversees the policy side of the Parks Department. The Park Board sets a goal of how much the cost recovery or subsidy for a program should be for each program service. And the Parks Board established a 95% cost recovery. In other words, only 5% of the cost of the service is paid for by the taxpayer. And not only did they meet it, they 100% recovered the entire cost of operating the farmers market from fees generated by the vendors, who of course make money at it, which is great too, right? All the farmers are making money. The residents and visitors get to come and buy fresh produce and more healthy food, and thousands of residents get to interact. So everybody wins in a goal like that, and that's just an example of kind of a combination of both cost recovery and using metrics for the revenue generation side, and also for things like how many farm vendors do we want to have out in the market.
so in other words, it pays for itself.
It does. That's rare. That's not normal.
It's as if
not true for
everyone,
swimming
I was
lessons.
going
Not
to
true.
say, as if everyone
No.
who went to the pool paid for the cost of the pool.
Nor would you want that.
Right.
Nor would we ever
Oh,
do
so
it.
to explain that.
Yeah, so there's so the Parks Board fundamentally established it's a pricing pyramid, and we look at the very bottom level of that, what's a basic level service that should not be something that should be limited by the affordability of that service. And so those are your parks, which are free, right? It doesn't cost you anything, and trails and other services. You just walk into Banneker Community Center has a 5% cost recovery goal for everything they do there, for a reason, because most of the people that are served by that location don't have the resources to go to the YMCA or other places, but they still need those basic level services. Well, swimming lessons is kind of in that middle of the pyramid. You ought to pay something for it, but not the total cost for what it really costs to provide a pool. And here's what I always say about pools and ice arenas. If they made money, there'd be a lot more in the private sector, but they don't. So that's why public entities subsidize them with taxpayer dollars. They're important. You want children to learn how to swim, because obviously there's repercussions if you don't know how to swim, and those are life-threatening repercussions. So the Parks Board establishes those goals for every single service. At the very top, you might have things like playing golf. Well, you don't have to play golf. I'm one of those people who likes playing golf.
Some people do.
But those people, adults that play golf, ought to pay for almost the entire cost of that.
And
So
you
there's
see
a-
private golf courses.
And you see
because
private. That's a
they're
good
out,
example of that, right? Or softball leagues. The cost recovery is not 100% for those, but it's not largely going to be subsidized by the tax base. It's going to be subsidized by the user.
Let me just say, I want to keep this farmer's market, even if it goes a little bit below 100, because it's such a great asset for the community too.
Right, and that's why there is a little margin
Yeah,
there,
right,
and that
right.
margin can change by the park board based
Yeah.
on trends that they see. Certainly it has value as a basic level
Right.
service to the community, but
Right.
there's also money being generated by a lot of those vendors out there,
Yeah.
which is great, and that's economy, we want to see that happen too.
So let's look at one more, the utility.
Okay, sure.
Going from farmer's market to water quality. So this goal, tell us what this
just
was.
to explain this graph, this is one of the disinfectant byproducts that we track, so DBP. This black line is the maximum contaminant level, or the MCL. If we go above this line, that's really bad. We will need to report that to the state.
And to the EPA.
Yeah, and to the EPA. So our goal that we set for 2018 was to be at half or below of the maximum contaminant level. So you can find the goal that this correlates with on page 95 of the updates document, but it is one that we did not meet in 2018.
So I don't know if everybody can see the numbers, but the graph starts in 2015, and then each line is a year, 16, 17, 18, and then 19. So this actually goes through, the last bar on the right is the year 2018. And when I came into office in January of 2016, which is, you can point to that, Morgan, right there, we were bumping up against that federal limit, Clean Water Act limit at the Lake Monroe water quality, which got a lot of attention from me and other people, and we immediately took steps, and you can see that that average was coming down regularly, has been coming down regularly, and again, we set this goal in the middle of 2017 for what we wanted in 2018 was to get below half of that limit. Now, what we'll hear from the Utilities Department, and you can look this up if you want, but in 2018, we had a combination of wet spring and cool spring that meant the quality of the lake water had more organics in it and more turbidity in it, kind of opaqueness, and that caused the the measurements of these disinfectant byproducts to bump back up. It's complicated. It's a 12-month running average, and we measure way more than we used to, so we're monitoring it closely. We set a very ambitious goal for this, to be below half of the federal safety limit, which itself builds safety cushions in it. And we didn't meet that in 2018, which I know our utilities department cares a lot about, and they're working hard, and they want to see that curve come back down. It is also seasonal. You'll see it move up and down with seasons. But, you know, look, this is transparent. We're wet. We have very safe water, and there's, of course, 100 other measures besides the disinfectant byproducts. But this is something we track very carefully, and we set a very ambitious goal, and while we met it for a period in there over the 2 years, 17 and 18, we're going to keep working at it, to keep bringing that down.
Yeah, but we should reiterate, it is an ambitious goal, and we're still well below the nationally and state mandated levels of safety.
I'm really proud. That trend you can see was really bumping right up against that limit, and we've moved it way down, and we're going to keep it down, commit to do that, and do whatever we need to do that, because this is a safety issue, so we want to keep well below that black line.
So we've talked about potholes, swimming lessons, and Lake Monroe particle levels. Maybe we can wrap things up in a more general way. What does this document tell us, and where do we go from here?
You want me to do that, or you want
Yeah.
Well, again, to me, this is, look, there's so much detail in this, it can be kind of paralyzing sometimes. But for every department, it's really important. It's articulating your goals, saying what you will do what you say, hold ourselves accountable. This is all about transparency and accountability. And ultimately, it's being able to say, did we have a good year, piece by piece? And what defines a good year? And work with the council and the public to say, what do we want from our city government? And I'm so proud of all the departments who work hard on this. There's 500 goals. It's a lot of work, Chris. You know, you're in the weeds of this all the time. But as you said, it's something that keeps you accountable.
Exactly.
And lets you know, hey, are we on track? And do a mid-year course correction if we're not, so that we try to get there. Don't be surprised by it at the end of the year. So, you know, I'm kind of a government geek on this sometimes, because I really do believe in being transparent and accountable. It's not easy sometimes to say we didn't accomplish this, but I'm really proud overall of what we've done, and I'm really proud that we lay this out there and let people look at it and come back to us. And when's the budget coming up? August.
We're starting
for the public.
the 2020 goals are in the process of being
Yeah.
written by the department heads. Then this is a kind of a piecemeal process. They start with that. They report out already. They have to us. In fact, Mayor, I wanted to mention to our audience, we use this as part of the performance review process with our department heads.
Yes, we
Trello
do.
goal review is part of that process, and then we look at their next year's goals as part of the goal setting for their next year of serving their departments.
Right at this
Leadership
table.
goals. Right at this table, we do that. And go over it very similarly to what we just did with all of the public as well. So we do use this as part of our accountability tool with our departments to show that they're accomplishing or trying to accomplish what they're set out to do for our residents.
And we did all this without talking the word Trello very much, which
No,
is,
we didn't.
that's the system of all this. But we don't, what it's really about is performance and accountability and transparency, and I appreciate everybody being willing to do it. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of work behind all this.
Mhm.
Well, I'm really appreciative that our audience has hung in there with us, and we appreciate this time to share a little bit more about how the government works. So thanks for joining us today. I would like to thank also Chris Smith from Public Works.
Thank you.
And Morgan Allen from the Office of the Mayor, along with Deputy Mayor Mick Reniason and Mayor John Hamilton. I'm Yael Cassander. Thank you so much for joining us today.